All right, so today we're diving into something pretty massive,
Okay.
the Roman Empire.
All right.
You know, it's interesting. You sent over a bunch of material about the fall of Rome,
Uh-huh.
and it got me thinking,
Yeah.
are there any parallels to today?
Mm.
Like, could what happened to Rome
Right.
happen to, I don't know, a company, a community,
Uh-huh.
even personal goals?
I think that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what's remarkable is how studying history, especially a case like Rome, can reveal patterns that are surprisingly relevant to building resilience in any system.
Okay, so you got my attention.
Okay.
Where do we even begin with an empire that spans
Well, you
centuries?
highlighted a point in your notes that got my eye.
Yeah.
The sheer size of Rome's territory.
Right.
So it's vast, impressive,
Yeah.
and ultimately a huge part of their undoing.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting. You think massive territory, massive power,
Right.
right? But the sources paint a different picture.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the campaigns in Dacia, which you specifically mentioned in your research.
Okay.
The conquest brought in gold, yes, but it also stretched Roman forces incredibly thin
Right.
and created this long, vulnerable border they had to defend.
Wow.
It's a classic example of overextension.
Right.
That moment when growth becomes more about ego than strategy.
So it's like that saying, biting off more than you can chew,
Yeah.
but on an imperial scale.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to, say,
Right.
someone running a business or even managing their personal life?
It's about resource allocation.
Okay.
Rome had to learn the hard way that every decision, every expansion has a cost.
Hmm.
It's tempting to go after every opportunity, but spreading yourself too thin can lead to weakness and ultimately collapse.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Have you ever taken on too many projects at once?
Oh, yeah.
Only to find none of them get the attention they deserve.
All the time.
Yeah.
I'm the Roman Empire crumbling under the weight of my to-do list.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, point taken.
So, overexpansion check.
Yep.
What else contributed to this Roman downfall?
Mm.
I was reading about their economic woes,
Yeah.
and it wasn't pretty.
Ah, yes, the denarius dilemma.
Okay.
You see, as their territorial conquests slowed down,
Right.
Rome faced a cash flow problem.
Uh-huh.
Their solution,
Yeah.
decrease the amount of silver in their coins.
Okay.
In the short term, it seemed like a clever fix.
Oh, wait, so they were basically messing with their currency.
They were, and it had disastrous consequences.
Wow.
It's a concept we see throughout history.
Right.
Debasing the currency leads to inflation erodes trust
Yeah.
and ultimately destabilizes the entire economic system.
That's a cautionary tale for sure.
Yeah,
I'm seeing a theme here, short-term fixes leading to long-term problems.
definitely.
But let's move on from the economic woes for a bit.
Okay.
What about the political landscape?
Uh-huh.
My impression is that it was less stable republic and
Yeah.
more reality TV drama.
You're not wrong. During what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century,
Mm-hmm.
Rome saw something like 20 emperors
What?
in just 50 years.
20 emperors?
Constant power struggles, assassinations, betrayals
Oh my God.
is a recipe for chaos.
Wow, 20 emperors.
Yeah,
No wonder nothing got done.
right.
It's like trying to steer a ship when everyone's fighting over the wheel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That lack of stable leadership meant Rome couldn't effectively respond to the growing threats it was facing. It's a potent reminder that even the best systems, the strongest economies, can be undermined by poor leadership and a lack of clear vision.
So strong leadership, add that to the resilience checklist.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't all internal strife, right?
Right.
The Romans were also facing some serious external threats.
You're talking about the barbarians at the gates, right?
Yeah.
The Battle of Adrianople in 378 CE.
Yes.
The one you marked as a turning point in your research.
Right.
Is a perfect example of how external pressures can exploit internal weaknesses.
That battle is wild.
It is.
The Romans, with their legions and their discipline,
Right.
were defeated by the Goths, who at that time were considered, well, less sophisticated militarily.
Yeah.
It's like the underdog winning the championship.
It was a symbolic blow
Yeah.
and a symptom of deeper issues.
Okay.
Rome was overextended,
Right.
relying increasingly on mercenaries,
Uh-huh.
and their legions, once the pride of the empire,
Right.
were struggling to adapt to new enemy tactics.
Okay, I see the connection.
Right.
The economic strain meant they couldn't maintain a strong standing army.
Yeah.
And then the political instability meant no consistent strategy to deal with these new threats.
Right.
It's all starting to fit together now.
Yeah.
But didn't internal divisions also play a part?
They did?
I came across mentions of social unrest,
Yeah.
and a growing gap between rich and poor.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
The sources you provided describe a society where the elites were increasingly isolated from the struggles of the common people. And then you have the rise of Christianity,
Uh-huh.
which, while eventually unifying, initially added another layer of complexity to the social fabric.
So Rome was dealing with this perfect storm of economic strain,
Yeah.
political instability, military challenges, and social fragmentation.
It's a lot.
It's like they were ticking off every box on the how to decline in style checklist.
It paints a pretty bleak picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But what's important to remember is that none of this was inevitable.
Okay.
Rome's decline was a result of choices made or perhaps not made.
Right.
And that's where the real lessons lie.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems, the what went wrong.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm eager to hear about the solutions,
Sure.
the what could have been done differently.
Yeah,
Let's unpack that in part 2 of our deep dive.
let's do it. Welcome back to our Roman deep dive.
Thanks.
We spent the last part unpacking the challenges that faced the empire.
Right. Economic woes,
Yeah.
political turmoil,
Mm-hmm.
military defeats, and societal fractures.
But amidst the decline, there are powerful lessons on building resilience.
Okay.
Think of it as a resilience checklist.
Okay, a resilience checklist, if you will. I like it.
All right.
Give me the first item. What was the biggest takeaway for you?
For me, it's the issue of overextension.
Okay.
The sources you provided highlight this beautifully.
Right.
Rome's desire to expand to control more territory ultimately became a liability.
Mm.
Their resources were stretched, thin, communication became difficult,
Right.
and holding on to that vast empire became a burden.
So it's like that feeling when you've said yes to too many projects at once.
Exactly.
Spread so thin that nothing gets the attention it deserves.
Right.
Everything suffers.
And what's fascinating is that this applies not just to empires,
Right.
but to businesses, organizations, and even individuals.
Okay.
It's about recognizing your limits and setting clear priorities.
Yeah.
Rome could have benefited from consolidating its power, focusing on core strengths,
Right.
and maybe learning to say no to expansion once in a while.
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes saying no is the most strategic thing you can do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so item 1 on the resilience checklist, avoid overextension. What's next?
Let's talk about bureaucracy.
Okay.
Now, every complex system needs some level of bureaucracy to function.
Right.
But Rome's administrative system became a tangled web of red tape.
Ugh, bureaucracy.
You hit the nail on the head.
I think we've all been there waiting in endless lines, filling out forms in triplicate.
It's enough to make anyone feel like they're living in ancient Rome.
Exactly.
And it's a reminder that systems,
Uh-huh.
no matter how well-intentioned, need to be regularly evaluated and streamlined.
Okay.
Ask yourself, are your processes empowering people,
Yeah.
or are they creating unnecessary roadblocks?
Okay, so item 2 on the resilience checklist, streamline and adapt your systems. Don't let bureaucracy become the enemy of progress.
Right.
What else should we be paying attention to?
This one might surprise you,
Okay.
but it's innovation,
Hmm.
or rather the lack thereof.
Right.
Early Rome was known for its incredible engineering, its military prowess, and its infrastructure.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, they stopped innovating.
Hmm.
They became complacent, clinging to old ways of doing things,
Yeah.
and ultimately falling behind.
It's the classic innovator's dilemma, isn't it?
It is.
When you're at the top, it's easy to think you've got it all figured out.
Right.
But the world is constantly changing,
Yeah,
and what worked yesterday might not work tomorrow.
exactly.
Yeah.
While Rome was resting on its laurels,
Right.
its rivals were adapting, experimenting,
Right.
and finding new ways to gain an edge.
Uh-huh.
The Goths, for example,
Yeah.
were quick to adopt new cavalry tactics that proved devastatingly effective against the traditional Roman legions.
So the lesson here is to never stop learning, never stop experimenting, and never underestimate the power of a fresh perspective.
I agree.
Item 3 on the resilience checklist, embrace innovation and adaptability. What else can we glean from Rome's downfall?
Let's talk about something you specifically flagged in your research. Succession planning.
Right.
Rome, for all its grandeur, never quite figured out how to ensure a smooth and stable transfer of power.
Yeah, those power struggles were brutal.
There were.
Assassinations, betrayals, emperors being declared left and right.
Yeah.
It sounds more like a soap opera than a functioning government.
It highlights the importance of thinking about the long game.
Right.
Succession planning isn't just about who takes over when someone dies.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building systems that ensure continuity,
Okay.
minimize disruption,
Yeah.
and allow for a peaceful transfer of power.
Okay, so item 4 on our checklist, plan for the future, develop your successors, and maybe avoid handing out daggers at Senate meetings.
I like that one.
Anything else we should add to this list?
This last one is crucial.
Okay,
Social cohesion,
right.
Rome's internal divisions, the growing gap between rich and poor, the fragmentation of their shared identity,
Right.
all of this weakened their ability to face external threats and internal challenges.
It's the classic united we stand, divided we fall scenario, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Building a sense of community, fostering inclusivity,
Right. Yeah.
and promoting shared values.
Right.
These are essential for any group, organization, or society to thrive.
Okay.
When people feel connected to a common purpose,
Yeah.
they're more resilient, more adaptable,
Right.
and more likely to weather storms together.
So invest in your communities, build bridges, and remember that we're all in this together.
Yeah,
That's a pretty powerful takeaway from the fall of Rome.
it is.
I'm seeing a theme emerge here.
Okay.
Avoid overstretching yourself. Streamline your systems, embrace innovation, plan for the future, and build strong communities. Is that our resilience checklist?
You got it.
Wow.
And I think the most important lesson is that decline is not inevitable.
Okay.
Rome fell, yes, but it fell because of a series of choices, or perhaps a lack of choices.
Right.
We have the power to choose a different path.
It's both a cautionary tale and a hopeful message we can learn from the past and build a better future. I can't wait to dig into what that future might look like. Let's do that in part 3 of our deep dive.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to our Roman adventure. You know, we've spent the last 2 parts dissecting the fall of this once mighty empire,
Wow.
unearthing the seeds of decline and everything from economic strain to political instability,
Yeah.
but we promised you hope. And that's what I'm most interested in. It feels like we've been looking at a cautionary tale, but what about the flip side?
Right.
What can we learn from Rome's mistakes to build something more resilient?
I think that's the crucial question.
Hmm.
You know, Rome's story isn't just about what went wrong,
Right.
but about the choices we can make to avoid similar pitfalls.
Right.
It's about taking that resilience checklist we talked about
Yeah.
and putting it into action.
So it's less about Rome fell
Right.
and more about Rome fell because,
yeah.
and that because gives us the tools to build something better.
Exactly. Let's
Yeah.
revisit that checklist. We talked about how Rome overextended itself, spreading its resources too thin.
Right.
They were chasing every shiny conquest, neglecting the core of their empire.
Yeah.
It's a mistake we see repeated throughout history and even today in our personal and professional lives.
It's like that feeling when you've committed to too many projects, said yes to every opportunity,
Right.
and suddenly you're drowning in a sea of deadlines.
Exactly.
It's unsustainable.
And what's interesting is that the sources you provided point to specific examples of this in Roman history.
Yeah.
The campaigns of Dacia,
Right.
which you highlighted, are a perfect illustration.
Yeah.
They brought in wealth, yes,
Yeah.
but they also stretched Roman forces thin and created vulnerabilities that enemies were quick to exploit.
Wow.
It's a potent reminder that growth without a clear strategy is just chaos dressed up as progress.
So lesson 1, know your limits, set clear priorities, and don't be afraid to say no to opportunities that don't align with your core goals.
I like it.
It's about choosing depth over breadth, quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now let's move on to another key element, adaptability.
Okay.
Rome, once a beacon of innovation,
Right.
became trapped by its traditions.
Yeah.
They failed to adapt to new challenges, new technologies, new ways of thinking.
Right.
It's a trap that's easy to fall into, especially when you've experienced success in the past.
It's like sticking with an outdated operating system on your computer. It might feel familiar,
Yeah.
but it's slow, clunky, and vulnerable to new threats. You need to constantly upgrade and adapt to stay ahead of the curve.
And what's fascinating is that Rome's rivals, the so-called barbarians,
Right.
were often more adaptable.
Interesting.
The Goths, for example, were quick to adopt new cavalry tactics and military technologies, which gave them a decisive edge against the more traditional Roman legions.
So lesson 2, embrace innovation, challenge assumptions, and be willing to experiment. It's about constantly learning, evolving, and adapting to the ever-changing landscape of the world.
Well said.
Now, building on that, let's talk about leadership.
Okay.
Rome's lack of stable leadership and its constant power struggles created chaos
Right?
and prevented them from addressing their problems effectively. It's a reminder that even the best systems can be undermined by poor leadership and a lack of clear vision.
Couldn't agree more.
It's like trying to build a house without a blueprint. Everyone's got a different idea of what it should look like, and no one's really in charge. It's a recipe for disaster.
And the sources you provided are full of examples of this. The rapid succession of emperors during the crisis of the 3rd century is a stark illustration. Each new ruler brought their own agenda, their own priorities, and the empire was left lurching from one crisis to the next.
So lesson 3, cultivate strong leadership, foster collaboration, and create systems that ensure a smooth transition of power. It's about thinking long-term and prioritizing the well-being of the collective over personal ambition.
I like it.
Now let's touch on something that might seem less obvious,
Okay.
but is equally crucial.
Okay.
Social cohesion.
Right.
Rome's internal divisions, the growing gap between rich and poor, and the erosion of their shared identity all contributed to their downfall.
Absolutely. It's that idea that a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Right.
When a society loses its sense of unity, its ability to face challenges, both internal and external, is severely weakened.
And again, the sources you provided offer compelling evidence of this. The rise of social unrest, the increase in political corruption, the growing sense of disillusionment among the Roman people, all of these factors chipped away at the foundations of the empire.
That's right.
So lesson 4, invest in building strong communities, foster inclusivity, and promote shared values. It's about recognizing that our strength lies in our collective unity, our shared sense of purpose.
And I think the most important takeaway from all of this is
Yeah.
that decline is not inevitable.
Right.
Rome may have fallen, but it fell because of a series of choices that were made or not made.
Right?
We have the power to choose a different path.
It's a message of hope, a call to action. We can learn from Rome's mistakes. We can recognize the warning signs, and we can take proactive steps to build systems that are more resilient, more adaptable, and ultimately more successful.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to leave you with one final thought.
Yeah.
The fall of Rome wasn't just about external pressures. It was about internal weaknesses. It was about a loss of vision, a failure to adapt, and a disintegration of their shared identity. These are challenges that any system, any organization, any individual can face.
So the question isn't just what can we learn from Rome's fall, but what systems in our own lives need a resilience checkup? What can we do starting today to strengthen our foundations, build stronger communities, and create a future worthy of the empires we all carry within us?
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the rise and fall of Rome. It's a story that continues to resonate across centuries, offering valuable lessons for anyone seeking to build a better, more resilient future.
Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep building